So, when the Yoruba spiritual system made its way to the New World via slavery and the slave trade. I understand that it took on different names. In Brazil, it's known as Candomblé. In Cuba and Puerto Rico, it's known as Santeria. The Spanish speaking world, they call it Santeria. Um, in America, no, and in Haiti, it's known as voodoo, Haitian voodoo. Um, could you add any more context to why its name's changed?
Well, um, if you can take, you've got to take into consideration who was taken. So let's go to a village. I go to your village and I rape it. I take all of the best people and leave the rest. So who's the best people? Maybe I go to the village and it's being raped already, but they just still take everybody. So it depends who we're talking about. So why I'm saying all of this is because the names that they decided to use are based on what they remembered. So if I was like not the priest, but I was into Ifa, but I wasn't a priest, I do my rituals because you got to remember that it was a way of life to be a spiritual participating in your own tradition, your own culture. So it was a natural thing to be. You wasn't a priest, but what you did is you pay homage to all of the ancestors and all of the energies
You gave an offering at the temple.
and all those things because you understood the spiritual system. Priests are the ones that activate and make things happen. But the people that they do it for are there. These are the ones. They do it for these people. So basically, you become that person, is involved in the culture, and now you've been raped and you've been taken away to a different place. So depending if you're the Babalao, if you're the priest in the temple, if you are just somebody that's a practitioner but not as necessarily a priest as such, you do what you do as somebody that pays homage to the energies. So firstly, the spiritual system is an ancestral reasoning, number one, before all of the other energy, before the ether system. It's the ancestors first. After that, they're the ones that bring out the energies of like Babalao and like Ifa. They're the ones that allow that to be expressed. Otherwise, it won't be there. So then the ancestors won't leave it for us. So they left the systems for people to continue. So ancestor worship is a normal worship for everybody in Yoruba culture, which leads on to natural spirituality within Ifa. It's like they're not separate really. I'm just giving you the basic how it starts. We don't start with Ifa. We start with your family and who they are. And then what happens is them families might be a Babalao, they might be a king, they might be a descendant of somebody who was them things. Then what we do is like, okay, so if your ancestors was kings, you're a king. And then we honor you now because we know who you are. Or the Agboni people who are the real kings of the village and the society, they decide, you know what, I like your character and I want you to be the one to be the king for us. So everybody's in agreement. They come sit down together spiritually, they do prayers, they do rituals. And as the ritual says, yes, that person's got to be our guide. Then they go and say, you're going to be the king. You're going to guide us to our society to do good things in the society because we only want a good king. We don't want somebody that's going to do rubbish to us or make our traditions fail or destroy our traditions. We have to have somebody that's going to keep it forever because this thing's been going on since we've been human beings for millions of years. So the thing that we're doing, the practices that we're doing are ancient practices that we've always been doing. We change the names based on the situation we're in. So if we're enslaved now, and we've been taken to Cuba or Brazil, like I said, depending on the character, So let's say Cuba. In Cuba, they're the only ones that brought Babalawos there because the Babalawos went there. They didn't go to Brazil. They didn't go to the other places because they wasn't on the slave ships. They took those who they took, who they thought was whatever. And then those who went to, um, Cuba and Brazil. So in Brazil, most of the people that was taken that was involved in the spiritual system of Ifa, it was a department that they took. So the department that they took was the House of Abatala people. And they took from that village all the people from Abatala and they brought them to Brazil. And so that group of people is the ones that decided the name of what it's going to be called. Yeah, so that's how it went in Cuba, that's how it went in Trinidad, that's how it went everywhere. Everybody who came with something, so maybe they were Shango people, so that's Trinidad. They came that way. They said, well, this is the guys, they took from our village, the Shango people groups. And so that's why in Trinidad it's called Shango. It's not called Orisha. It's not called none of them things. It's called who they were. And every single place that they took us, those who remembered who they were, they made it the dominant factor of what the thing was going to be called. In Cuba, it's not called Santeria. It's the Spanish people that call it Santeria. The black people didn't call it that. They called it Lukumi. In Yoruba, my friend. So they were using their languages already. They remembered themselves, but they was enslaved. They were tied up in chains and they couldn't be themselves. And then they were forced to be something else. Sometimes they take their tongue out. Because they know if they start to speak, they could probably release themselves. All kind of things that they did, they knew that these people were very powerful. That's why they changed them up in all kind of funny ways. In their eyes, in their nose, in their mouth, in their ears. Because they understood the power of these people. Just don't forget, they know who these people were. And that's why they did what they did to them. So anyway, so to that question is every place in Cuba, Brazil, in Trinidad, even Jamaica, and all of the other Caribbean islands, depending on who remembered what and who could retain what. So in Trinidad, it's the place of runaways. And the place of runaways was like, they run away and they find a patch and continue what they remembered. They'd go and fight with the soldiers, hide, and then do their rituals. The other people that didn't have that opportunity, they couldn't do that. They had to do everything in secret. So they'd be on the plantation, but the plantation's like 5 acres. So it's going to take the master time to watch and see everything. He can't. He's got to rely on the slaves to grass. Otherwise they won't know. In that context, those who are there now find spaces so they can do things in secret. So nobody knows what they're doing because they remembered things, but they do it in secret because if they didn't do it in secret, it was not going to survive. The slaves who gave up would grass on them. So they had to even not tell them, their own people, that they were doing their things. They had to hide from their own people. So you had 2 situations. One was in secret, where they was on the plantation doing their things in secret because the plantation is so big, they couldn't really know what every single slave is doing. And then there's the runaways. Those who run away and went to a location and just built their little foundation, fortified it with when the people came, and to this day, most of these places that did that, they've got a space where it's recognized of what they've done. So this is the story of the people in the diaspora. The diaspora meaning that the people that are scattered, people that have been scattered from somewhere. That's what the diaspora means. People that are scattered from their traditions to all over the world. You understand the terminology of what you're using. So we Africans became diasporan people, but enslaved.
You said runaways. That's synonymous with the Maroons.
It's not just the Maroons. And so the Maroons, they're runaways, but what happened is they had runaways chasing the runaways. We didn't have that in Trinidad.
Okay.
It would just be the state chasing you. But in Trinidad and in Jamaica, they had the state, they had runaways chasing runaways to get money, and then they kind of basically sold them out. The Maroons, had to kind of go in deeper into the bushes and so on. So that's the Jamaican story. It's not the same story as everybody else. Everyone's got a unique story in the Caribbean.
Interesting. Very interesting. You're almost like an ambassador for IFA in London, United Kingdom. I don't know if you realize that you are probably the number one go-to person for IFA tradition or IFA spiritual system, guiding and counsel. Do you want to be able to be more accessible, that people know who you are, that if they would like to get a hold of you and they wanted to pursue the IFA path as their spiritual system and identity?
I'm happy to guide people to what their potential is, because it's a potentiality. It's not a forced. I'm not there to gang people into IFA and you got to be this. No, you have to. If there's something that you think that you should be doing, then you've got to go and research personally yourself, and then I'll be able to guide you a little bit on your research. And if it's deeper you're going to go in, then that'll be your own decision. And then you'll decide if you want to be involved in the system or not, because we've got to understand that we're coming from a Eurocentric understanding of our ancient systems, because we don't speak the languages. That's what I'm saying, that you don't speak Yoruba, you don't speak, Akan, you don't speak...
Or Ewe, or Fon.
Or any of these languages that are the foundation of understanding the system. Because if you don't understand that, you've got a second-hand version of what you've been told, because we're using
English or French
or
Spanish,
interpretations of what we say is spiritual and what they say is spiritual. And our interpretations are slightly different, but you won't know until you speak the languages. And the only way you can go into the languages, actually go into the spiritual system, so that you have to say prayers and this and that only in the language. You can't say in English. It doesn't have the same energy.
Are we betraying ourselves as a people when we surrender ourselves to Islam or Christianity? Are we betraying our own spiritual system and energies and delaying our liberation when we bind ourselves to other systems that are not ancestrally ours?
Well, let's put it this way. Most of the people have been hoodwinked, so they don't know what's happened to them. So the choices that they think they have is kind of not real, They're all slaves. Everybody's a slave until you unslave yourself. So we're talking about politics. In a sense, your passport is not Yoruba. Okay, so you have to change that first. And then if you really want to be Yoruba, then you'll be Yoruba. If you really want to be Orisha, you'll be Orisha. If you really want to be in the system, you'll change and you come out of this system and go into the system that's really part of you. So that's a mountain to climb, because you have to understand this corrupt system first. And when you understand this corrupt system, where our slaves was taken and all that stuff, then you'll understand what you're supposed to be doing. So just to be spiritual is just part of the solution. But you have to understand what happened. And somebody like me now, I go home now and told the kings and the spiritual people what's going on here, because they still don't know.
So you're really like a doorway between the West and
Africa.
If you want
to call it that. But I have an understanding of what's happening in the West, because if you don't come to the West and you just stay in Africa, you won't know nothing, and vice versa.
That's true.
You won't know what's really going on in Benin and these places, or Shogbo or Ile Ife, because you didn't go there. And you don't talk to these people. And they don't speak English. So how you gonna? You have to change if you want to be involved in this thing.
Mm.
And you cannot bring Eurocentric things to make it adjust because it doesn't go that way. The energy is designed to be a certain way, and our energy is what we created is to be a certain way. Now, we're in a predicament where everybody in the world is enslaved right now, right? So that's the first thing we must say that. Why? Because these countries did things hundreds of years ago. You just mentioned the slave trade. That was just an element of it. But they were doing that before in different ways. So they slaved us up in some other ways after that properly. So now, when they did that, they decided to slave their own people. When they enslaved Africans, that's the first time they enslaved all the European peoples proper. Because it was a mechanism that they were experimenting with. We was the experiment. And then they did it to their own kind. So basically, when you understand the history of what's happened, then you're going to understand yourself a bit better and what you're supposed to do next. So, the reason why we're going to get involved in Christianity and Islam and other isms is because that's what's been given to them. They wasn't given Ifa. They wasn't given the Akan traditions. They're not there in this country. They're not there in England. They're not there in Trinidad. They're not there in Cuba. The Catholic faith is the number one thing in Cuba. Then those who were slaves, they secretly did their things. And what happened is the world appreciated it, not the Cuban government. It was the people outside that brought them up. So people said, you know what, we need to go to Cuba, man, because then people can't get things going on. It wasn't the Cuban government. What the Cuban government done, they said, you know what, okay, you're doing them things in secret, bring it out, we exploit it. And that's what's Cuba's going on now. They're exploiting their traditions. Meaning like other people taking it over and using it and being babalaos and all sorts of things. That is not their culture or their traditions. So just confusing the situation, basically. So this is what the slave trade has done, is create confusion. So you don't know who anybody is. It doesn't matter, I'm this, it doesn't matter if I'm that, As an African, you're lost because you don't know who you really are. You're not making any, you're not trying to find out what happened with your own descendants, your own people. What was the story? And then relate it to what happened in the past. So then you can now align yourself to what you're supposed to be. So if you were Yoruba, you can still be Yoruba. In this day and age, you can still be this and that, but you have to believe that. But if you're if you don't understand what's happened to you as a person, as a human man and woman, where you've been relegated to something that is less than that now in these societies that we live in, and that's why people don't care about our traditions, because there's no value. They don't understand the value of it because they know nothing about it. They only understand the Eurocentric values, and these values has nothing to do with our values. So there's a lot of things to think about for people that want to get involved in our systems. They have to change their mind.
You're fortunate. You're of obviously Trinidadian descent. Your parents' family, your immediate family comes from Trinidad and Tobago. Somewhat of a blessing, because that island held on to what they call Ifa under the name Shango.
Yeah, the Ifa system with one of its defenders of the system, Shango. He's the youngest of all of the energies, and he's considered like the child warrior that's going to do something amazing in another time frame. He's like the energy of the future. That's Shango. He's the child of all of the other energy fields or orishas, let's call it that, yeah, so you know what we're talking about. So the spirit energies that we recognize in the plane, in the earth, in the universe, all these energies are there. We already understand what the energy fields are. So Shango is one. That group of people is the ones that save Trinidad. and I'm part of that line.
Proud.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm proud because our people did not want to disappear into nothingness where they didn't exist anymore. You understand?
Do you think Shango influenced Trinidadian flag? The fact that it's red
Yeah, of
and it's
course.
black.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
got anything to do with the Shango tradition? Because I know
Yes.
Shango's
Yeah,
colours are red,
yeah.
sometimes red and black or red and white. Is that
Yeah. It was going to be in it. It's going to be the colors of the energy that's the strongest, which is Shango, and then the black is there because Elegba's there.
a
That's what.
lot? How many Trinidadian people know this? That their flag has got this type of Yoruba, Orisha.
They don't. Well, I mean, everything is flags. If you understand the reason of flags, then you understand it's you. When you make a flag, you're making a statement that you own that land.
But it's also the thing,
So
the symbols and signs on flags is to do with the people as well and the culture. I don't know how many people from Trinidad and Tobago know that their flag is influenced by the strong Asian African tradition.
they do know. Of course, they know. They made the flag, so they're gonna know. But those who are who've resigned themselves to the Eurocentric ideal will not know. Yes, no, people won't know because they're not there to praise that part. If they could, they put the British flag there instead. You understand? But they couldn't because the people that was the fighters, they're the ones that put the flag up to say, this is us. We're not long long to do with Britain. You understand? So that's what has happened. This why the flag is really important. Because that means you fought for something. Yeah, never take it for granted. The flag represents you fighting for something and it's your space. Nobody can come in there. So that's what Trinidad done.
It's powerful, very powerful. 500 years or something. They managed to hold on to this tradition in those parts of the world.
Well, they
Cuba.
tried. Cuba, they tried. But again, we're not. We're in a place where we're not. It hasn't grown or developed in any way because there's still a Eurocentric thing. The place is still owned by European people.
You don't think there's growth going on in Brazil in terms of the Yoruba tradition in places like Brazil, Cuba, Trinidad? And Trinidad's becoming more very popular.
It's more understanding. But the people that participate in, that is growing a little bit too. But my point is, the land still belongs to white people. It's still run by white people. It's still run by Eurocentric African black people who have no interest in their own traditions. And so what they do is they work for the systems against us because they are the ones that are in the house of the slave house. They didn't go outside. So these ones are the ones that are, are kind of allowing for not there to be an African place. They're refusing. So they could be Christian, they could be Masons, they could be Muslims, they could be Catholics, they could be Buddhists. All of these groups of people don't do anything for African tradition at all.
Wow.
So African tradition is at the bottom of the pile when it comes to respect. So the land of Trinidad should be an African state. Finished. If we invite Indian people and other people, it's an invitation that we're bringing them, not because the English people brought them there to make them work harder than black people. So right now in Trinidad, it's Indian people that are ruling the roost as far as the finances, as far as the politics, and as far as everything is concerned. It's not Africans. But they were there first. And we're even talking about indigenous people yet. The people that was there before we came. So there's lots of things to speak about. You have to understand what you're talking about. So we put a flag there because it's the African flag. But there's indigenous people that have their own flag as well. That is not recognized. And nobody knows who they are. So we have to be real about what we're going to, what's happened. Because you've got to put everything into context. We as African people went to a land where other people was. And they probably are people as well. But they was there in another time frame.
What is the holiest time of the year, one of the holiest times of the year for Muslims is Ramadan. One of the holiest times of the year for Christians is Christmas and Easter. What is the holiest times of the year for the Yoruba? What the holiest festivals?
Ancestor worship and
Round about what time in the year
it's
does?
like January, December to January time, maybe February time, depending on the location, because everybody does things within the location that they're in. It's not a calendar date thing.
It's not a calendar date.
You have to go to Ifa and say, "Could we do this? When are we supposed to do that?" And then Ifa will tell them what day to do it. There's no calendar.
They don't, but they don't have like like a Rosh, like Jews got Rosh Hashanah or
They have a time
Yom
frame,
Kippur.
but it's not like this is going to be on the
Stamped.
7th.
Okay,
No. Because
interesting.
if the energies might say, no, this is not the right day to do it, so let's do it tomorrow. We have to do what the energy says to do on that moment. That's the difference. We don't pre-plan things because it might not work.
So the priest and the priestess decide
Yeah, the community,
on behalf of the
community.
Orishas.
On behalf of the Rishas and the community that are going to take part in the thing. Everybody has to be acknowledged. So before you start doing anything, we have to know what's happening. So our times is when we do things for Eshu, for Ifa, and for the ancestors. And for the female energies, maybe like Ajay and Oshun and Olokun. They're the energies that we honor because they're all of these energies I've spoken about are in your atmosphere. If it's the water, if it's the whatever it is, they're energies that are around you. They're in nature. And so what happens is we've been disconnected from nature. Africans have been, those who live in these places have been completely disconnected from nature. They don't know what the tree does anymore. When I go to Benin, how much trees they show me that does things. I thought, right, man, we don't know nothing about nature. We lost it. So when you're taking us out of our jurisdiction and you bring us to a new jurisdiction, we had to go and learn everything in that space again, and they didn't have everything that was in the other space. So it's a new creation now that had things that had to substitute. So it didn't have OB. So what they did, they found bitter cola growing in Trinidad. So they used that to ask for something. Would it work? Yes, because it's the people that have created that reasoning to do that spiritual thing in the first place. So it don't matter, as long as they get the right things and they check with the divine that, can I use this thing to call you? And if it says yes, then we can do all of these things. Other people can't do that. They can do it in action, but they're not going to get a result. If we do them things, it's going to get a result. So what's the result? The result is sustainable, eternal continuation of our powers. That's what it means when we do something. That's why Trinidad and Cuba and Brazil and all these places exist. So then things wouldn't work, innit? And then they'd be just slaved up proper. There's nothing to say. No, there's like a small quota that did the right things, and the rest didn't.
The reason why I ask about holidays and festivals because it's a time when they can bring people together of the same faith. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's not why we do our things.
Okay.
We do it because of the atmosphere and the time frame and what has to be done, foods growing, all different reasons, nothing to do with this, what you're talking. This is a Eurocentric thinking. Okay. We deal with what's happening on the ground. So we need it to rain for 3 months. What are we going to do? We need to do a whole heap of prayers. We need to do certain things. And when it rains for 3 months, food is everywhere. Too much. So this is a reality in Africa. That's how it goes. So people are dealing with what's on the ground. That's my point. They don't just make up things because to bring people together. There's got to be a reason for it. We want to feed you all. So what's the best time? Let's do it after the rainy season or Shun time. That's the way to bring all of the Orisha community together because we're going to give food out to everybody. Everybody's growing food everywhere in their land. And that's when they celebrate. You understand me? So we don't celebrate for no reason. or for a reason that is just something to do with Eurocentric reasons. No. It's got to be something to do with what we're doing before.
And lastly, how important is the African artifacts like the Benin bronzes and the Yoruba bronzes to be returned back to the native peoples, the Yorubas and the Iwe and the Fon and the Edo people?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's up to the kingship of these places to take their goods back. And they have to do that. So it's up to the people of the Yoruba people, the Benin people. So what I say about that, somebody coming to your house and stole all your things, what do you expect to happen? We expect I'm coming to you and say, I want my things back. But the thing about that, they raped it and destroyed it. A lot of them items and stuff, some of them is for display for people to see, and some of it is sacred. You're not supposed to see some of that stuff. You're not supposed to be exposed like that. So basically, them things are like, for instance, like that, there'll be like a shrine that's personal to me, and you putting it on display. It's not supposed to be for the other truth people to see as well.
It's not for their eyes.
It's just for my family to see that, not your family to see that. We only show you when there's a celebration or something. Now we're going to show you because that's the time to show you, but most of the time that is secret for us family, or it's something that's sacred for us to do. So this is something, a different conversation.
Okay. Good. Let us.
Yes, brother.
Yes.
So everything.
Ifa.
Ifa's the man. He's the man. So you listen to what he's dealing with and all of the information that he's sharing with you, and listen wisely. Try to align yourself to truth. What's truth? You have to investigate the truth. There's a lot of things to learn. There's a lot of things to understand. And it's your life journey to understand them, because the predicament that Africans have been put into is this non-understanding of sovereign self. All right, Ashe.
Ashe.